In this episode, we have a very special guest, Janel Koloski. She is an actress, a model, a producer, a coach for other creatives, and so much more. Janelle is a delight. She's down to earth, and she shares what it's like to be a creative with ADHD. And if you're like, well, I'm not really a creative, I'm not an actress or whatever, some of her just words of wisdom that pop out of her mouth are meaningful, not just for creatives who are trying to make a living doing the thing they love in that regard, but also for the rest of us. I highly recommend you catch this episode. Welcome to the Self-Loved ADHD Woman's Way podcast. I'm your host, Jen Barnes. If you're an ADHD woman entrepreneur, ADHD adjacent, or ADHD-ish, you've come to the right place. We'll dive deep into the unique challenges you face, from the inner turmoil to the outer obstacles. We'll blend neuroscience, IFS, and somatic healing, and explore practical strategies to help you navigate the world of entrepreneurship with ADHD with greater ease and effectiveness. I'm glad you're here. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. Today we have a super special guest with us. I'm excited to bring Janel Koloski to our show, and we're going to just explore the life of a creative with ADHD. And so, Janelle, welcome. Can you share a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm Janel Koloski. I'm an actor, model, and business coach for creatives. I currently live in New York City, and I've worked in New York, LA, Chicago, Florida, Canada, like all over the world. And I've been doing that full time for 12 years now, modeling, acting, hosting, producing. And I also have ADHD. Yes.
Yay! I'm so glad you're here because do not live the life of a creative. I mean, sure, I create podcasts and emails and writing, and I'm writing a book. No one knows yet. I think I just announced it. But anyway, but it's exciting to get to talk with a creative because one of the amazing benefits of ADHD is being creative. And now here we are with someone, I don't want to say like capitalizing on that, but you're using it, like you're working it. And yeah. Yeah. So what is ADHD like for a creative? Do you just are you just constantly flooded like, wow, I got all this superpower.
Yes, it's definitely learning how to harness it. I'm creative, so I have a lot of ideas and a lot of interests. And I had to really figure out how can I put energy into the things that will make me the most happy and I can do long term and keep things going. And also learning to balance all of it has been pretty tricky because um, a lot of times we can start something and be very excited about it. When it gets kind of boring, then you move on to something else. So that's been interesting to navigate because now a lot of creatives are multi hyphenates. They used to talk about the triple threat, like model or model, no, actor, dancer, singer. Now we're trying to move away from this thing of the starving artist. It's so silly. Everything is really broadened that you could be a photographer and a model. You could be an actor and a model and do all these different
Wow.
things. Uh, because a lot of the people that I coach, they have all these interests and they're worried about prioritizing the right things. But then they say, well, if I'm an actor, but I'm working at a coffee shop, then it means I really care about acting. And they're afraid that if they do too many creative things, that they will be spread too thin. So I'm trying to just teach them to use all these interests to empower themselves to build a lucrative career instead of not believing in themselves enough to have the focus and be able to prioritize in the way you need to. Like I've had to for so long now to have the career that I have.
It's interesting with you're talking about helping creatives really narrow their focus, which is something that I talk a lot about with entrepreneurs. And They have all these great ideas, and what am I gonna do? And it's like, y you could, it wouldn't go well. You can't really have 5,000,000 products because you get spread so thin, and you're almost talking about the exact same thing, and then with ADHD, we've got this shiny object syndrome business going on, and it sounds like that's not unique to entrepreneurs. It sounds like it just manifests differently in creatives. But so that you're doing almost different branches of creative work.
Yeah. And I try to look at it as spinning different plates and seeing which one is really sticking. Because a lot of times people will give up on their creative career because they'll hit a low for too long. And so that's why it's important to have uh, multiple interests and use all of that, but you have to prioritize the thing that's working at that time. So, my modeling
Right.
work, yeah, it's like my modeling work is finally picking up again, but I hit a lull for a year. It's still working pretty steady, but it wasn't what it was before the pandemic, and that got a little weird. But then I said, well, it gives me a lot more time for other things. So I'm not putting this down, but this is not the time for that. And so I think the public has this idea, and then in turn, people that are just entering the industry, or maybe they're in it and they haven't gotten to a certain level, that, and there's one path. And if it doesn't go this way, you'll never be successful. It's always going to be like this. And I tell creatives, you are entrepreneurs. You are the boss of your creative career, the boss of your life. Nobody's going to want your dream more than you do. So you need to show up for it and understand it's a business and you got to get organized. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a business, and it sounds like a business with multiple products, like we were saying. You have your acting product or service, you have your modeling service, you have your producing service, and maybe you also have your working in a coffee shop service. And what sounds scary to me, I guess there's a degree of uncertainty with all entrepreneurship. It just seems like for creative types, so much of which part of your business is going to work is completely out of your control at any given time. So, is that right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah. Every day, I think, well, I guess I work next week.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And because there's been times where I've booked work and something happens and the whole job gets canceled.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah, or yeah, the client could change their mind. And so that's why I wanted to empower myself by finding all the work I could in fashion entertainment that aligned with my authenticity. So there's people that do a lot of voiceover work and they make,
Oh,
yeah, they make maybe the same amount, or commercials or print work, modeling. There's all different types of jobs that you can do. And so that's what's helped me feel safe, because then the more jobs I get in fashion entertainment, they keep um, spilling into each other. Everybody works in both. And then I never stopped having work come in, even though it was like all these random jobs. But if you're
right.
working at a coffee shop, maybe you'll be lucky and meet someone one day that happens to walk in there. But and there's nothing wrong if you enjoy being a barista. But we talk about survival jobs. Yeah, you could be a lawyer, and that's your survival job. It's anything that doesn't light you up. We
I
wanna
love that.
Yeah, we wanna damn the artists, these people, these weird people that channel the human experience for others to see and hopefully invoke empathy through storytelling. Uh, we're not the only ones that
Yeah.
it's any job that you don't like, I think, is a
Yeah.
survival job, because 'cause you're just like, "I have to survive." Ah, you know?
Well, you know what comes to mind for me? And I know we didn't necessarily talk about this. A lot of times, entrepreneurs, and this is, I mean, your creative clients and you are entrepreneurs with multiple products or services, right? And we talk about lots of people have survival jobs. All entrepreneurs do, to bring in the goods while you're building your business.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because there's an element of risk when you quit your survival job, and and we talk some people talk about manifesting, And then some people are like, have contingency plans and all this stuff. And I wondered, like, do you talk about stuff like that? Or like the manifesting piece? Or are you more like, hey, let's have all these different lines of business like you've been talking about and just think positive? Or like,
I definitely make a plan. I get very clear on my goals and what I want and dream big.
yeah,
I'm so grateful. We were just talking about how I just booked a TV show working with Jude Law, Jason Bateman, and Laura Linney, and that was on a vision board. And how that came together was just a culmination of all of this I was just talking about. And so it's so important to just dream big and then let things fall as they may and just keep showing up for yourself in these opportunities because it's nuts. Like I worked with Sofia Vergara last week.
wow.
Um, and it was a beautiful, like very close, intimate appointment, a showroom appointment for Walmart. And that's all very behind the scenes work. But when people enter the creative world, they sometimes think, I have to be famous to work. And I'm like, no, you can work all the time. Just dream big. And then I also am a big fan of kind of checking in with yourself and the mindfulness of, okay, what went well this week? What didn't go well? How can I pivot? That's what I've needed to do.
Yeah,
And then you can catch things and catch how you're feeling. A lot of times people are afraid to make a plan because I want to be free. And I'm like, yeah, you can be free. You're going to change it. You're going to shift it. But that you don't want to wake up in June and wonder why you're not even close to your goals. It's because you weren't checking in. I'm
right.
not scolding people. This is from my own personal experience. And so I think that's how I manifest. I was working all these odd jobs and then modeling was starting to pick up. And I thought, how much money do I want to make a year? And I wrote down on a piece of paper all the different, I researched all the different type of modeling acting jobs that aligned with me and how much you would get paid to do that. And I was like, oh, well, this is how many I would need a month. And then I started to kind of make a business.
Yeah,
So I'm not guaranteed those jobs, but I do believe putting it out there also puts a little bit more of a fire under you to go for it.
like go do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. You were talking about every week evaluating, and it got me to thinking about just how deeply you are evaluated as a creative.
Yeah.
Um, I know we've had past conversations about doing modeling and people talking about you in front of you, like about your body in front of you. And I just am like, feel myself making myself smaller at the thought of that. And then when you think about, RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria, and for people listening who don't know, it's just that people with ADHD tend to get extra sensitive and maybe even emotionally triggered by criticism. And there's reasons for that that we can unpack today or another time. But I just wonder, do you get a crap ton of RSD when you're like constantly being criticized by maybe directors or producers or photographers or whatever else is there?
Um, it definitely took me a long time to work through the rejection, but as I started booking more work, I realized that the more I just love myself and focus on me, like whatever's meant for me, I can't miss. And so
Mm.
even I did a photo shoot today and I had a great time. And when I went to that casting, I did not think they wanted me because I showed up and they even said, Anna? And I was like, oh no, hi, I'm Janelle. And they were like, oh. And I was like, should I go? Now I just can joke around.
Uh-huh.
And they were saying, oh, well, we really see you as this type of model, production fit, which is I'm basically the standard size 8 medium for a lot of companies, but that's a whole different conversation. Um, you know, versus print modeling, which is the pictures you see online of people in these bathing suits or clothing. We don't really see you as the print model. I was like, okay, I've done it. And they kept saying all these things that I could have taken negatively, but someone taught me to just be curious
Oh,
if I started feeling rejected. And so then I would say, what are you really looking for? You need to do what's best for your brand. I mean, I know what I'm doing and I show up in a professional manner, but if you're looking for a different model, I know a lot.
yeah.
They were like, oh, and then they ended up hiring me and today I killed it. Um, so, but it took me a long time to get there, but I still really misread a lot of my friends and family, and it becomes very difficult. And
Oh,
it's like, "Oh, I don't wanna mess up or be too much." We were kinda talking about that, like
yeah,
feeling
yeah.
or masking. Um, I usually feel awkward 3 days after everything I do.
But so even though you have all these awesome practices as a creative professional to not, uh, let the the criticism or very direct feedback negatively impact you, it sounds like RSD still impacts you, just more in your personal life.
Yes.
Yeah. Almost like how a therapist I can stay super regulated in session and with a client and wow, I come up with the best things for people to be able to say something to people. And then if I'm in one of those conflicting conversations, I'm like, so it sounds almost like that. Like you're almost a pro at knowing how to handle feedback or criticism in your business.
Yeah, and I think I meet how many people a year in my business, and we say, "We're just gonna assume I'm gonna get told no 9 times, and the 10th time I'll get it." So when you have this kind of quantitative thing going on, it's easier to move through the rejection, but, like, with your, like, close friends or your family, you're like, "This is what I got, and I poured so much into building this relationship with you.
Right.
Why'd you give me that look? What did I do wrong?" You know? Um, and I think oftentimes I think that I'm doing something or that I don't have the same space as others to make mistakes. I'm not sure if that's related directly to ADHD or not. But that's definitely been my uh, experience with this rejection,
Yeah.
or Janelle, you're high energy. And then, wow, you're really low in your moods. And you're like, you know,
You're like, "Yeah, I got ADHD. I can be super intense and then I can crash. That's how it goes." Like,
yeah, yeah, that's how it works.
hello. I mean, maybe not some people have inattentive types, so they tend to be more, inwardly focused, less hyperactive, but for those of us who are more have a little bit more of either combined type or hyperactive, we tend to go and be intense and then we crash.
Yeah, and you've taught me how to work with that. That's
Mhm.
something that we worked on, and
Yeah.
it's great when you've got the energy to do the things you need the energy for, but now instead of trying to push myself to keep always staying on the schedule or whatever, and with my clients, "This is what we're trying to get done this week," and you try to put it at the beginning of the week, but as long as you get to it, because I used to be so harsh. But
Yeah.
even with taping an audition, I used to be like, "I have to get it in tonight." And then if I was feeling too low, of course it would be so difficult, but if I would go to bed and regain my energy, I could get it done in 1 to 2 takes, but I used to push myself through these low energy times, and it was excruciating. So
Well,
learning to
and
work with that.
it's true. Well, and that's something I talk about a lot in my program and with the people I work with is we want to match the tasks that we're doing with the energy we're in. And so usually I do my podcast in the morning. I was grateful for you to be willing to meet with me. So I'm doing my podcast in the afternoon. But I usually do my podcast in the morning because that's when I'm at my most creative and least distracted. So we're we're doing good. But, but it's like following the energy because when you do something like I'm terrible at writing emails first thing in the morning. If I write an email first thing in the morning, it will take me 2 hours to write the same email that I could write at 3 in the afternoon in 15 minutes. And it's a similar kind of concept, whereas when you feel exhausted, like you just need to rest, you're not going to get shit done anyway. Or if you get it done, it's going to be like not the highest quality because your energy is off. And then it's going to take you like 5 times longer because you're not feeling it. So you're going to make mistakes and have to start over and start over and start over. And then it just, yeah. So I love that
you're following your energy, and I love that you're able to recognize that, "Oh, wow, okay. Right now is not gonna be a good time for me because I feel like I need to be in a blanket burrito or something."
Yeah, and feeling comfortable with that and in work and in social situations. Um, it's very funny. I can just go hard at a rock concert or something, and then there's other times I walk into a room where the music is loud or the TV is loud or the clock is ticking or something, and I'm like, "I can't be here." It's very sweet. My friend even we went to a movie Tuesday, and the music in the movie theater was too loud, and she got them to turn it down.
No way.
Yeah, it was generally really it was, like, just unnecessary, like, not even I was because I was like, "This is" it's something so loud that it's distorting the sound and you can't even
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I had forgot my special earplugs.
Okay, because I was gonna say, I have loops, they're the best.
Yes, I love loops, and so I was like, "Oh my gosh, can I borrow your hat?" I was gonna wear 2 hats. So that's always been interesting to me, but I used to feel like you gotta keep going, hang out with the friends, and you gotta listen to the loud music, and so having the earplugs like loop, you
Yep.
know,
Yeah.
uh, and things like that have been super helpful, and just being okay that I need those things, whatever.
Well, it's just right? That's kinda what I've decided. I come with loops. I come with needs to go hide in a bathroom stall sometimes and not talk to anyone for half an hour. I I come I come with inappropriate things that I say sometimes, because sometimes I'm too tired to mask, and it's really about just radically accepting that this is who I am. Not that we're like, "Oh, I'm just an asshole, whatever." Not
No,
that
I
we
hate
don't
that.
No, right, that's not okay. We're obviously talking about continually not in a, "Ooh, I have to fix myself" kinda way, but just an evolution and a growth over our lifetime, while at the same time accepting that there's some stuff about ADHD that we can accommodate and not have to make ourselves crazy over.
No,
Yeah.
and I've definitely been learning that taking care of yourself is just as kind as taking care of others. It all matters.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
Taking care of yourself is just as important as taking care of others.
yeah.
It's true.
It's true, like, when I'm putting my earplugs in so I can be comfortable sitting there with you, I'm excited to be there with you, but that's something that I need, and if I'm gonna just pretend I don't need that, we're gonna have a bad time.
Totally.
Right, or if I'm too
Yeah,
tired to be around you and it's just gonna be I gotta just I have friends who be like, Not tonight, I need space," you know? That's
right.
great. I love that, please,
Yeah.
take the space.
I wonder, and this is just me talking to a creative, which is something I don't do. Is I do creative things, but I'm not a creative. Like, I'm not an actress or actor or whatever, whatever. That and again, maybe this goes straight back to, like, you've learned some skills, but it seems like there'd be a certain extra level of vulnerability. Like, like, okay, when you go places in general, just as not as your job, we're always being perceived. Like, we're always perceived everywhere. And sometimes I just get tired of being perceived, but I don't have lights shining on me and people telling me, like, "Oh, you need to say that way," or I don't even know what they tell people like you. But, or saying like, "Oh, I don't know, her butt looks a little whatever here." I have no idea the kind of shit they say, but like, that's gotta feel very vulnerable, and I almost wonder if you get, like, vulnerability hangovers or just like, I can't be perceived anymore today." Does that happen to creative types?
Yeah, I noticed that I'm getting too touchy about things. Like my mom will say, "Janelle, I think it's time to start a new day." And that could mean taking a nap in the middle of the day or actually going to bed at night. Or I have to do some type of breath work. And I have this app that I love called Finch. Finch and Loop, you need to pay us.
Right?
But
I know, right?
I love Finch because it's like it reminds you, like, say something kind to yourself today that you would say to a friend. And I feel like for so much of my life, I've been trying to be normal and to not upset other people with whatever these things I have that, you know, I'm not being kind to myself. So
Yeah.
I've definitely learned like, I need to breathe and cry because I've had a lot of stuff coming at me. And you might not even be taking it personally, you know?
Yeah.
Like
It's just a
it's kind
lot.
of it's just a lot and it's very funny. So for production fit, you have to be very specific measurements and you can never lose or gain weight because essentially they are building, you go to Target, they're building their size medium shirt on your body like you're a mannequin. They cut and pin and sew on you and they only have 4 times, usually 3 times maybe now, to perfect a garment before they mass produce it in stores.
Whoa.
So, we're part of this process, and it's kind of funny, but, like, my arms are long
Oh,
compared to the average person, which isn't that big of a deal, but it keeps me actually from getting jobs sometimes.
oh my
And
gosh.
so, yeah, if I notice myself getting, like, a little spicy about, people commenting on my arms, I'm like, "Whoa, I gotta go to bed." Like, this is
So wait a
yeah.
minute. Okay, so I have a long torso and long arms. So seated, I look much taller than I am, but I have very short legs. So seated, I look like I'm probably about 5'7", but when I stand, I'm about 5'2" and 3/4. Like exactly. And so that would be really hard for me to be a production model because I'm not uniform. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, like, they have whatever the mannequin is you see in a store, like a mannequin, like, we're as close to those things as possible, and they have all sizes, like, the whole way up to 24 or, I don't know how far high up sizes go but I'm like,
okay,
"Hey."
I'm gonna have an ADHD moment.
Yes.
Excuse me, I'm gonna have an ADHD moment. So here's my question. Why do they use real humans instead of mannequins?
We can give feedback, like, how the clothing feels.
Oh,
Yeah, which is a big deal, and then
okay.
we can also, like, move in it so they can see the movement. Uh,
Okay. That makes sense to me. Also, I
yeah.
would like to meet the person who says they're a small at for Target because it's not true. They're like a medium. No,
Yeah, we're gonna tell them, like,
yeah.
"Hey."
You tell him that Jen Barnes says, because even the extra small, I'm like, I can't. Target clothes are not. I don't fit what a Target model has, a product model. But anyway, my ADHD moment. But yeah,
Yeah.
so what are other things? You said you're a coach for creatives. What are other things creatives struggle with? Because I've got a couple of the people in my program are artists. One is more like art therapy type stuff, but she's an artist herself. And then another one is going to sell her artwork as we move past the imposter syndrome pieces and all that kind of stuff. And maybe you have tips on imposter syndrome even. But what are things that you see a lot in creatives that they struggle with or want coaching on?
A lot of them think about other people a lot and, like,
Okay.
the numbers and how many people are out here doing this. I will say, I don't know if it's because I get overwhelmed, but it's been really lovely that I'm so focused on just trying to get the job that I don't think about how many people are out here trying to do this. I've always just
Yeah.
said, I don't think anyone has the desire to do something that you can't accomplish. I think that would be very odd. There's a lot of things I don't have a desire to do, not meant for me. So if I really want to do something to the point where I'm losing sleep over it at night, I go to see a movie in the big screen, and every time I see those people, I leave. A part of me dies, not in a negative way, but I'm just like, I'm meant to do that.
Yeah.
So that's always just been like, all right, I'm just gonna keep showing up and doing the thing. But a lot of my clients will compare and despair, or they feel like the imposter syndrome. And the thing is, somebody's always going to be better than you at something or not as good as you are in that moment. And you just have to know it's your journey. So I remind them of that. My favorite thing is to tell them to prioritize what scares them the most. Do that first.
Ooh.
Yeah, because that's usually what you need to do next, or at least it will build a confidence in you that your brain will talk you out of. Your body has to go through that. Last night I had to put 15 pages um, on tape for a submission today for something that is a very huge role. Like it's a big deal.
Ooh.
But they told me last night at 7 p.m. I didn't sleep last night.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, you don't do well without sleep. You're going
Right.
to suck. And then I kept dealing with that. I was like, nope, they chose you. They believe in you. And then I try to get my clients to look at, when have you been in a situation similar or parallel to this before? And that helps me as a creative. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then society kind of separates us. We're like the people that are just the creatives, and, we got to stay out of the business world. But I was just so eager to make money that I just kind of I got to jump in here and I don't care what anybody thinks. But there's a lot of fear around that. I don't want to step on any toes. I don't want to upset anybody. But then when you learn how people that work in business all the time, they just, I don't know. There's like a paperclip method that I love.
Paperclip
Um,
method.
yeah, I read this story about, I think it's a Canadian banker. He got hired there, and I can't remember if he tripled or quadrupled the revenue
Oh,
of the
my.
bank because he just brought in 120 paper clips in one jar, an empty jar in the other. And he just, like, every time I made a phone call, and it didn't matter if the phone call went good or bad, he just kept it moving and that consistency. And so that's what I try to teach my clients. Like, just pick a goal. Let's not overwhelm ourselves. At least for a quarter, this is a part of the goal I'm going to do. And I just say, paper clip it. Let's paper clip it.
Ah.
Yeah. Cause you're planting seeds. And I freak out all the time. I'm like, when's my next job going to come? And then, but you realize you plant enough seeds or you've done enough paper clipping that you're just like, I don't know. And then something happens. You're like, okay, it worked.
That's awesome. It's funny that you were saying you tell people to do the big hairy scary thing first, which is funny because as a therapist, I would tell people to do the exact opposite. Like start small, it's okay, but I almost wonder if I've been disempowering them to like reinforcing that they couldn't handle it. I think sometimes they're terrified to start big, so it's okay. Take something that's easy, something you can do. But also, it's important to remember that it's not necessarily always that way either. Like sometimes you do just need to go do the big thing, and then everything else is easier.
Yeah. A lot of my clients, I'm like, do enough that you have confidence left. I'm good at this. I'm going to check these boxes off. But I kept running into this thing where I would, be getting a lot done, but I wasn't moving the needle.
Yeah,
So definitely do things that you're like, okay, I can do this. But then people are afraid of emailing casting directors or talking to their agent. I'm like, okay, so Monday, pick up the phone and call your agent
yeah, yeah.
because you have to have a healthy relationship with your agent and stay top of mind to work because you enter the business and you're like, I'm talented. People will find me. And there aren't many people. There's a very small percentage of people that actually show up fully because it's very scary to do that. Or people aren't pushed to do that. So just making that phone call to your manager or agent, it just goes a long way because there's so many of us. And then, you know, oh
Squeaky
yeah,
wheel.
yeah. It's a big deal. Yeah. So a lot of my clients are like, oh my God, I'm ready to give up my modeling career, my acting career. I've been doing this for so long. And I'm like, okay, tell me what you have been doing.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I talk to my manager once every 3 months. I'm like,
Oh,
no,
no.
call him every week,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's okay. I'm not criticizing anybody out there. I've
Right,
learned this.
right.
But this is what helped. And then they realized the consistency, the paper clipping, the prioritizing the scary thing. Um, then they're like, oh, I wasn't crazy, and it builds their confidence. And then they start booking work. One of my clients got a print ad on the side of a bus, which was really cool. I was like,
Ooh,
oh,
did you
Anna,
did you see
yeah.
it? Did you see the bus? And you
I chased it down the street. And I was like running. Everyone's
That's
like,
hilarious.
it's New York though. There's a lot happening here. So people just kind of like, okay, you know? But I was so excited. Yeah.
That is exciting. Although I have to say, like I know Jude Law's a big deal, but I hear Jason Bateman because I'm from that era where Jason Bateman. I'm like, I don't know. Like, that's pretty sweet, you know? But
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
what
sorry, what were you gonna say?
well, I was just gonna say what's fascinating is here you are doing these things. I know you've been on American Horror Story for a while now, I think. And
Yeah.
yeah, and you're doing this show with Jude Law and Jason Bateman, and then you're still like, I don't know if I'm gonna have work next week. It 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 I'm almost speechless. That just sounds like such a rough business. And that as I hear you talking about the intentionality, it seems like that is the necessary piece. And it makes me think my product artist, for example, right? She has this artwork that she creates. And it seems to me maybe the plan is get out there and create some additional revenue streams for yourself.
Yeah, because then also you don't seem as desperate. I think that was the other thing. I was a
Yeah.
lot more empowered to, if I was working in other areas of the industry, I don't know, one time I was posting something for Now This or Thrillist, I can't remember, one of those online media outlets. And we had a great day. I interviewed this apple farmer, and he was hilarious. He even got drunk on his own cider, which is a wild experience. The
Oh my
day
God.
carried on. Yeah, and then at the end of the day, I heard the producer talking about a film that he was filming the next week, and I thought, "Wait, I know that film. I submitted to audition for you." And because I had worked with him all day and I felt very confident doing this other thing that was, like, unrelated to acting, I just blurted that out. Whereas if I was just sitting at home, I would be like, "Oh, and he gave me the job on the spot. He didn't even audition me
Oh my
because
gosh.
he worked with me all day and he saw I was very professional and he saw my reel, which is like a resume, our visual
Yeah, yeah.
resume, clips from work we've done. And so I really believe it emboldens you because you're not just like focusing on this one thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's even almost a tip for entrepreneurs. Like, on the one hand, absolutely, we don't, my ADHD entrepreneurs listening, we don't need 5 million products,
No.
but also to not put your energies in one place so much that you get desperate because
Yeah.
desperation doesn't sell.
No, it's people, it's all about your energy. And even now, I just talked to my acting manager, and like the modeling is going to take up a lot of time, I believe, this year. Um, and then I can be very all or nothing at times. So I was like, so do we just stop submitting me for acting? And he's like, no, you know, he's like, take this thing, it's here right now. And this is what you're doing right now. And we'll just keep auditioning you. And then if something gets in the way, then we'll move on. And I'm like, oh, okay, right. So, um, but if I was just focused on acting and wasn't open to these other possibilities, I wouldn't have that, you know,
Yeah.
that. And then it's an adventure too.
Yeah. Well, I think about some of the actors like, I don't know, like Tom Hanks or Meryl Streep or oh my god, I almost said Cyndi Lauper. I guess she does do acting, but or whoever. And you think about how far apart their different gigs are.
Yeah.
And now granted, maybe at that place they're making a few $1,000,000 a show. So perhaps they don't have quite as many things on the side, but probably early on they did. Either that or they were the starving artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
They were. Yeah.
yeah.
And that was like a thing. And I did that for a long time, but then I was so tired. And now everything is on self tape. We tape ourselves on our phones and then you just send that wherever. And I've booked work in Atlanta and LA that way.
Wow.
And you work as a local hire, but then you have to fly yourself there because you're local, right?
Ugh.
So I was just like, it's a business. And this is what I keep telling the creatives. You have to invest in yourself. And part of that investing yourself is flying yourself to that to build that credit. And so you got to play the long game. And so it's really helped me when people are afraid of like, well, but if I focus on too many things, is it just keep coming back every week and being like, how am I feeling? What's working? What's not working? Is this? And I try to say, give it a quarter. just like a quarter. 3 months of your life isn't that big of a deal. If you're like this whole year, and I'm like, just try it. Go hard though
Yeah. Yeah.
for a quarter. And then if you're like, okay, this really isn't working, then move on.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that's been helpful and putting self-care first.
Oh, right. It's
Yeah.
interesting. I always wondered that about when you look at actors and then you hear about the crazy recording schedule.
Mm.
As someone who listen, I'm child-free by choice because at 35, when I was still kind of considering it, by then I got used to my 8 hours of sleep a night, my daily workouts, my daily meditation and yoga and all the stuff, and I was like, like, not willing to give that up.
Yeah.
And 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 then I would hear these actors having these crazy schedules, and I was like, "How first of all, how do you still look beautiful when you're that exhausted? Like, how much makeup do they anyway?" But I was like, "How do you do that? How do you be pleasant on screen? How do you with such little sleep? Do they not do that anymore, or is it still like that on a set where it's crazy intense and you're barely sleeping and eating?"
Yeah, they generally have to give you 12 hours in between shots, usually. Shots, like between your days.
Okay.
Um, so that's a rule I've observed. Now you do have the choice to say, I'll work sooner than that 12 hours, but then they have to pay you more. Um,
Yeah.
but I think also it can be feast or famine at times. Like I was talking about this rolling hill. So, for example, Tuesday I had a large chunk of time and I wasn't really working a lot. And I was like, okay. So I went to the bathhouse, like sauna situation, all of that for 2 hours. I went to see a movie because it's enjoyable for me, but also that's research because if they're working and I'm not, they're doing something right.
Right.
And
Oh my
then,
gosh, I never thought of
yeah,
that.
so it's kind of, I'm enjoying it, but I'm also studying. Um, I had a great dinner and then we met up with old friends and it was like this really nourishing moment. And I used to be afraid to take those opportunities, but I'm still glad I did because then what day? Today's Thursday. Wednesday, I modeled like 9 to 6, and then I had to get this mani pedi, certain color they specifically asked for, and a facial, and all this. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go home and practice my modeling, because posing is weird for me still. And then I was like, okay, now I'm gonna get 8 hours of sleep, and then that audition came in,
Oh, right.
which could have been like a potentially, we'll say, life changing audition if I were to book something like that. I was like, not sleeping tonight. So that's why I tell my creatives, like, try to take it while you can. And then, as an all or nothing person, even doing like a mini morning routine and a mini night routine and like midday,
Yeah.
just like little mini meditation or laying down and breathing, just checking in. But yeah, I used to be afraid of the self-care days because I came from this kind of very like blue collar, like track your hours. I grew up with a lot of money, so like the scarcity mindset would come in, but then my body started breaking down and I wasn't making clear decisions. Then I realized take care of yourself and everything else will work out. But no shame, everybody. It's really
Right.
hard to be there if you
That's
haven't
right.
experienced it and you're
That's
coming
right.
from this like poverty type of like, scarcity mind. If that's what you grew up with, hey, hey.
Right. Right. Well, there's work to be done there, but I love how you talk about that because I have a lot of what how do they say that mompreneurs or whatever.
Mompreneurs. Yeah.
I think that's what they say. But I have clients, but then also just people who listen who I know are moms, and for them to get their self care in, and so I like even just those mini moments. I was at a conference for entrepreneurs in the beginning of the month, and they they had this, like, breakthrough of the year thing, like, it was, like, people who did really well submitted, and then they were on stage talking about it, and it was interesting, 2 or 3 of the people talked about how their business didn't do amazing until they created the space for the things that they loved.
Yeah.
Like, they
Because
worked
it's life.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they worked less, but they made more, because they created the space for those important things. And that doesn't mean they didn't drop everything when necessary to do well, like kind of like you did with the last night with the audition. But they spent more time with their kids. I think all 3 of them were parents. But at any rate, they did the things important to them, and it was then that they were able to do it. And so I love that you're talking about, yeah, if you have a day, take the day, especially in your business, because you may not have a full day for another 3 weeks or 10. And you'll have moments, and that's great, and then take the moments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And yeah, I mean, wow, much appreciation and admiration for all the moms out there. I am
Yeah.
now an official stepmom. It's hard because these little beautiful souls are not even my kids, but I want to be able to be present for them, and we have so much fun.
Yeah.
Then there's like, oh, but I gotta get stuff done. Like it can't be like constant playtime, obviously. And yeah, I mean, like moms are like super, like they become like superhuman because you have to get up a lot of them at like 5 a.m. or something just to maybe take care of yourself a little bit, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So very
It
cool.
it's true. It's true. Well, this has been delightful having you here, Janelle. It is so fun to chat with you, and just hear what ADHD is like for a creative. And I gotta say, before I totally wrap, it reminds me of how a lot of ER docs and ER nurses are actually they have ADHD because of the almost chaotic pace about it. And so
Mm,
it makes me wonder if a lot of creatives, like people in your field, are ADHD because even the somewhat creative, the chaotic nature of what you do. And I gotta believe it serves you well to be able to handle the chaos and the uncertainty.
I think so. Yeah. You're just kind of like, okay, here we go. And it can be a lot of fun, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus like the mundane, like day to day. Right. It just seems
It's
like
like
a
solving puzzles all the time, like constantly solving puzzles.
yeah, that's like an ADHDer's dream.
Yeah, exactly.
Although I have to say, it is not my dream to stand in a swimsuit and have people comment on my body. So I'm just gonna tell you that right
Yeah, I don't know how I ended up there, like, when I started modeling, and then today I was like, "All right," but I brought so much more joy to the shoot, like, but when
yeah.
I started out, I was so kind of nervous and didn't
Yeah.
wanna mess up, but it was so cute, like, to watch everybody like, in the beginning of the shoot, there was a new model, and she was great, but then I came in, and I was, like, joking, and I'm like, "All right, let's go," and I was, like, rushing around, and it just changed the energy of the room,
Yeah.
and I was really nervous because I didn't sleep, and
Right.
I don't like to show up in an unprofessional manner either. I'm not that kind of I was like, "Okay," but we were just all laughing, and I don't know. It's just like going with that.
Almost not
Yeah.
taking yourself too seriously, but being
Yeah,
professional.
yeah, and, that I guess that's the name of the game for anybody, really.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for being here. You're able to speak to something that I have no expertise in, which is being a creative and like it for a living. And it's just an honor and good luck with your auditions, especially the one from last night.
Yeah.
But all of them and yeah, and just thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Jen.
Yeah, so, let me ask if and I didn't let you know I was gonna ask this, so if we need to put it in the show notes later, that's okay. If someone is a creative and they're looking for a coach to help them, where might they find you?
Oh, the easiest way is on my Instagram, Janel Koloski official. Um, yeah, I know,
Hey,
lame,
I think that's awesome.
but
Well,
yeah.
you are an actor, so you kinda have to have
I'm like, "The one and only." But, yeah,
that.
someone, like, took my name, which was weird. And
What?
yeah, like, some fake person, so I had to be like, "Alright, I'm
Maybe that means
official."
you're famous. If someone wants your name, maybe you're, like, officially famous.
Maybe. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, you just come on there, You can send me a message or I have links to book a consultation. And I work with everyone for like free for 30 minutes, which usually ends up turning into an hour. I love to work with people long term, but I don't want anyone to give up because they feel like they just can't succeed. Like maybe I'm not cut out for this. I'm like,
Yeah.
you are. You just got to
Right.
change something.
Right.
Yeah.
This wouldn't be your dream if you weren't. If you weren't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool. Thank you so much, Janelle. It's always a pleasure. I always love talking with you. So it's such a pleasure to connect.
Yeah. You too, Jen.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Thanks. All right. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode. And if you loved it, I would love it if you would share this, especially if you know any creative types who could really benefit from Janelle's work. That would be fantastic. And you're always invited to leave a review for the Self Loved ADHD Woman Way podcast. And there's even instructions with a janky kind of video on how to do it in the show notes. So we'll catch you next time. Take care.